Okay, welcome everybody. We're just going to get started in a moment. I'm just going to give everyone a chance to come into the room. Welcome to those of you that are watching on the YouTube channel. And welcome to what looks to be a nice crowd here joining me live on Zoom today. Thanks for taking time out on a Friday afternoon to join me, or Friday morning if you're out west. And welcome to the Friday webinar. I see mainly familiar faces here with me today. We were supposed to have Dr. Arthur Uhl join us today, but he was unable. He's just fallen a little bit ill and wasn't able to commit today to doing the webinar that he wanted to do on repertoire, and perhaps little found repertoire is what he wanted to talk about. So we're going to reschedule that for later in the fall and bring him on. He's got some really interesting ideas and insight into repertoire that we probably have never heard from or heard of before, and is rarely published. And so we'll get back to that. And so when that happens, I sort of reserve these spots to come on and chat with all of you 3 or 4 times a year, just to talk about things that I don't have a chance to mention, that are too long to type into the regular emails that you all get. And to give you a chance, though, for most important, I think, to ask questions about some of the things that I'm saying, or things that you're dealing with in your studios, questions about the registration process that we have, questions about our new portals, how we're going to do things. I think it's become obvious over the last year, we've sort of hit our new normal in terms of returning to in-person exams, but we're seeing that 68% of the students overall want an online exam when given the choice. And so, we're adjusting to that. And I feel like this year will be on our end a little smoother. You may not have noticed a difference for us, but the last year with a new database and adjusting to these normals and trying to get things going in person again, quite a challenge, but I think we've got the challenges worked out and the bugs worked out. And so I'll talk today about a number of things. If you have questions at any moment, those of you that are watching me live, feel free to throw those in the chat box and I'll monitor that and stop as we go to answer those questions. Those of you that are watching after the fact, this is Friday, January 26th at noon Eastern time. If you're watching after the fact, feel free to email me, derek@conservatorycanada.ca, if you have any questions, want to follow up with anything I've said or wasn't able to answer here. I want to go over, first of all, protocols for Zoom online exams. That's become a little bit problematic, and I just want to make you aware of, again, as I did at the beginning of the year, on a few of the things that are causing us some grief, things that I think can be solved. June in-person exam registration, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about in-person flex exam options, which are growing. I'll talk a little bit about digital badges. I'll talk a little bit about our YouTube channel, make reference to that. And then I want to talk a little bit about exciting new thing, new piano publications. We are looking to, or in the process of replacing the New Millennium series for piano. And I'll talk about that toward the end to give you an idea on what we're working on and what the timeline is for that project. Okay, so first of all, Zoom protocols. There are a bunch of us doing the Zoom exams regularly throughout the year on a flex basis. And we've started to notice for the last many months now that most students aren't coming to the exam with Zoom audio settings that are coherent enough for us to be able to hear them. And I'd say in at least 80% of the cases, we have to start the exam with a 5 or 10-minute session that has us try to figure out how we can hear the piano. We didn't have this problem during the pandemic so much, but I think the Zoom software has changed enough where they've tried, my best guess is they've tried to update the software so that it can make a distinction between the audio for when we're speaking in a conversation during a meeting and when something is happening, perhaps musically. They realize, I'm sure, that there are many musicians using this as a software to hear music. And so they've taken some of their optimization and changed it so that we have to change the settings from what we normally have in default on Zoom if we're to hear the piano at all. We used to be able to hear it a little bit, but we're to the point now where we can't hear it at all. And so that's been a bit concerning. All of the time, we do get to that point after 5 or 10 minutes where we've got the students on a device with audio settings where we can hear the nuance, we can hear the dynamics. But what we want to do is make students a little bit better prepared, because if we start to schedule a full day of Zoom exams, for example, which does happen in certain studios, we want to be able to hear those students, and we don't want to cause them any undue pressure or stress when they're there to perform. They should just be able to focus on that, and that's it. So I did a webinar back at the beginning of the year, and I'll show you on the YouTube channel a little bit what that looks like, where I go into detail and I actually demonstrate using 3 of my devices. I used a laptop that I'm using now. I also use my iPad Pro, which is only less than 2 years old, and I use my iPhone, and I demonstrate the differences between them and the inability I have to project good audio from the piano on a mobile device. The worst device was the iPad Pro. There are ways around it, but most students are coming in with these mobile devices and they don't realize that Zoom's just not optimized for that. If they don't have the latest version downloaded as an app on their device, they're not going to be able to set original sound. Some people are able to figure that out. And then it works a little better, but still we find the best solution is to have a laptop computer with an external microphone if they have it, and have original sound enabled. Most students still don't understand how to do that. And so what we've decided, or what I've been trying to do, and I mentioned back in the fall, is that I want to lean on the teachers, on you a little bit, to help bridge that gap, that if students want that Zoom online option, that's their preferred option. They don't want to do the MIDI on a digital piano, which we still have a number of students doing as well. But I'd say, you know, well over 50% of our exams are heard on Zoom nowadays. We need the teachers, we need you to help us, even though you're having in-person lessons more than likely. If they're going to do Zoom online exams, you need to do some testing with them and help educate them using either the webinars that we put out or the technical data sheets that we put out a few years ago that demonstrate simply for them how to enable original sound, for example, and how to test their microphone so that it is capturing good audio. Most students don't have an external microphone, and we understand that a lot of laptops are perfectly fine without the external mic. It's just we don't hear quite as much. We can hear a little bit of nuance. Sometimes it's really definitely not clear on the pedal as to what we're hearing. And you'll hear that if you go back and watch that webinar back from September that I did, you'll hear the differences that an external mic can make as opposed to the laptop computer mic. Some laptops simply do not have a good microphone. The microphone is buried. It sounds like it has dust in it. It sounds like it's underwater, and it makes it very difficult to hear. We do have the odd instance where examiners report having to go to the phone and get students to phone in the audio over Zoom, and then they can hear a little bit better. That's a solution that we had during the pandemic. And unfortunately, we've had to resort to that in cases. So our plea to teachers is, we know that Zoom online exams are here to stay, but please help us by educating your families that although everyone wants this assessment to happen, we need people to understand how poor the audio quality is sometimes that they're broadcasting. And they're going to start seeing in the comments now things like, although you may be attempting dynamics, I cannot hear them in this environment today over Zoom. We're starting to use comments like that so that people will pay more attention, because it's the honest truth. We can't assess at a high level, and students are putting a lot of effort into this music and into their exams. And it's not fair to us to have, as examiners, to have to guess at what the assessment is. In cases where we have to guess, we can't give students the benefit of the doubt when we're not sure, even though we're watching very closely and hoping that it's working. It's honestly not working as well as it did during the pandemic through the software. Again, most of this can be solved. It's just a matter of educating on how to use original sound. And in a couple of cases, there's a new live music mode that Zoom has as well. If students click on that option, I've had some really good results with students in exams. Okay, questions? Do we need to, I like this question. Thanks, Chelsea. Do we need to indicate that we'd prefer to use MIDI? You had an experience where an examiner wasn't ready and set up for MIDI, even though that was the hope for the exam. They did get it set up and we were able to go ahead with the MIDI, but I wonder if there was something missing. There is an option in the registration if students want to use MIDI. They have to collect whether they're using MIDI or not. What we're finding is most students are checking yes, they want to use MIDI, not realizing that it's not MIDI. So what MIDI is, everyone, you see the digital piano I have in the background here. Let me get off screen for a second. That's what we use there for the MIDI software. The software is on the laptop and it hooks up to the keyboard, and both keyboards can talk. We've been doing e-exams like this since 2007. It's the best way to do things in terms of an examiner hearing, because it sounds like the student's right there in front of me playing. Even, you know, they're effectively controlling my keyboard and we can share sounds. It's also really good for ear training. That software only costs $40 US now. If teachers had that with a digital piano in their studio, it would work great. Myself, I realize that's not a really great option because my students play on the acoustic piano when they come for lessons, and they have acoustic pianos at home. The ones that have digital pianos at home, we still use the acoustic piano here. So when I have my students do an exam, I want to use the acoustic piano because they're familiar with the touch and the action. They're not so familiar with the digital piano. I find they can't get the dynamics right. And even though the examiner will hear them wonderfully, I don't trust it. The students aren't going to be able to control it the way that I know they can. So I use the acoustic piano, I use my laptop, I use an external mic for those Zoom exams, and it works very well. So part of this whole thing is and I'm getting off topic here from Chelsea's question, but I'm going to come back to it. I think teachers should consider running the Zoom exams from their studios if they have that ability, because you can control the sound quality. And we see a number of teachers doing that, but that number is shrinking. And so that means we have to do education to the families, and we're going to start to hit them a little harder with emails and things. I'm going to take that webinar I did a while back and maybe thin it out a little bit and make it more concise so that people can watch a 5-minute video of how that all works. That's something we need to do. In terms of MIDI, MIDI is with digital piano and software. If you want, that's what students click on their registration to say they're doing a MIDI exam. Most of us now see most students are clicking MIDI thinking that's just an online exam, and it isn't. So you're going to see the odd examiner not prepared because we're just assuming that people have checked that box erroneously. Hopefully we can get to the point where that data means something to us and we understand what is MIDI and what isn't. So I think what would be a good idea, Chelsea, in your case and others that do use the MIDI for the e-exams and see that value, as I do myself, is when you're communicating with the examiner, just remind them or let them know. And the examiners usually try to ask in the emails that you're going back and forth to exchange repertoire lists, that the MIDI is what you're going to be using, where you're using internet MIDI for the exam, and the examiner will be prepared to do that. So I would just do that as well until we can get that data sort of rectified at the registration level. Okay. Okay, good. Yeah. So Chelsea's just following up on that. So thanks for that question. That helps remind me about Zoom and MIDI and the MIDI option. So in terms of Zoom protocols, if I could share the menus on my screen, I would go through that now, but I can't. When I go through those dialog boxes within Zoom, it doesn't actually share that as part of sharing my screen, so I can't show you that. But I'm going to create a video at some point with screenshots, but I'm sure most of you are familiar with that anyway. If anyone has any questions about doing that, let me know. But you're going to start to see comments so that families get the message that they need to do a better job at broadcasting audio, whether it's don't let anybody else use the internet during the exam, but more than likely it's the device they're using. And we see people trying to do that exam on their phone. We get them to switch to a laptop, which they have, and it works quite well. Sometimes new laptops don't work well. Sometimes old laptops do work well. It is so individual. It's like a fingerprint. We never know what we're getting into. And we could sure use teachers' help in getting that organized for us when those exams come up. So any questions about Zoom exams, feel free to let me know in the chat box. Again, any of you that are watching this after the fact, maybe what I'll do now is I'll share my screen and we'll go over to the website and or the YouTube channel, and I'll show you where that business is, where you can see it. Here's Conservatory Canada TV here. This is the home page. If you look at past live streams a little bit further down, this gives you in chronological order where you can see all the webinars we've done lately. I scroll to the right and I see hosting Zoom exams with Derek. That's from 3 months ago. And if you click on that webinar, it's a 40-something minute session where I go over it in detail with slideshow notes there. And let's see in the description. Better. Did I put? Yeah, I put here in the description, scroll to 27-minute mark of this video to see the demo part where I use different mics and devices. And I talk quite explicitly about that. So that's one thing that we're going to start linking to when examiners work with the students to share repertoire lists. We're going to share this video so that parents know, or at least have an opportunity to look at this and see in advance what is expected and how they can better broadcast that audio. So that opportunity is there for them. While I'm here, you can see, I really appreciate those of you that are registering to come and watch and listen to the webinar live so you can ask questions within Zoom. And there's a number of you that do that. You can also just come to this webpage. You can come to the Conservatory Canada TV YouTube webpage, and you can see right at the top here, at the top at 12 o'clock Eastern time, you'll see me there with a live icon. You click on that and you can watch this webinar live right there. If you want to watch it live, but you don't want to register, or you didn't register and you want to check in, this is where you can see it live right off the bat. And then a few minutes after that, within I'd say 4 or 5 minutes, it shows up down here under past live streams. It also shows up in any of the various playlists. While I'm here, I'll talk about this. We have a playlist dedicated to all the webinars we've done for teaching beginner piano. Chris Norton has his own because he's done quite a few of these. Music Pedagogy Research has its own playlist. Any of the Super Score webinars with George Lythurst are there. one just called webinar replays. All of the webinar replays are in one spot. All of the webinars get put into that channel if you want to see what they all are. Mock exam webinar replays along with the mock exams. These two playlists work together. If you want to watch, we have 4 mock exams there from 2 years ago. Our recitals and performances, that also has things like our convocation ceremony we just had in November in London. It's there if anyone wants to watch it. That's by far the most watched thing we have on the channel. Music by women and BIPOC composers. Most of those webinars are by Eleanor Gummer and Cecile de Rosier. They're with us once a month. Video tutorials, those are also found on our website on the various syllabus web pages. And then webinars for new teachers. If you have new teachers or you yourself are a new teacher and you're curious about CC, this is a great place to start, to come in here and have a look around at all the new webinars. That's an ad. We have a contemporary idioms piano syllabus webinar overview. We also have one for the classical piano syllabus, digital badges, and we have American Popular Piano tutorials for the improv requirements for CI piano. And we also have keyboard harmony requirements, where I go into detail with on-screen tutorials to tell you exactly how to prepare students for keyboard harmony on the classical piano syllabus. So that is a really great feature. I'll mention one thing. There's a webinar that we had not long ago on the waltz, really great webinar. I'm just going to go to the live tab because I know it was under live, with George Litterst and Stella Sick on the waltz. Sometimes something happens to a webinar and look at the description underneath. I can put things like, there was a video shown at the 48-minute mark of that video that had to be removed due to a copyright infringement. And so all I did was simply splice that video out of there, and the video goes back up. Some of you that watched that webinar early got to see it, but within 2 days it was taken down, and this webinar you couldn't find for a couple of days until I rectified this. So what I did was I put the Ravel Waltz played by Glenn Gould here with a link so that you could actually go to that one and watch the whole video if you wanted, or scroll to the 11-minute mark to see that little separate video that was taken out. Anyway, I would highly recommend this webinar for anyone that's playing waltzes or is curious about the waltz. I learned a ton from this. I've had some of my students watch this already. Really great visuals and audio. It's very rich with content and ideas and things I had no idea about in terms of the waltz. There are slow waltzes, there are fast waltzes. There's a certain attitude and history behind the waltz that I think we should all be aware of. Anyway, I found that one really fascinating, and I'd encourage you all to take a look at that if you're interested. Okay, now I'm going to stop share here. Coming back to my next topic. In-person exams. We returned to in-person exams in 17 centers across the country last June, and we hope to do the same. We're going to add a couple of centers, it looks like, coming up this June. And we're changing the registration process slightly so that if students want an in-person exam, they have to register for the June session. If students want to register as part of the June session, but they want their exam online, they need to register with a flex exam. They need to register somewhere else. And so starting next week, when I open that registration for June exams, is actually not open yet. We have it coded into the database where there are going to be a couple of extra steps where students are warned that if they want an online Zoom exam, they are not to register for a June session exam. It makes things quite difficult for us in converting them to a flex, and it's just a bit of a nightmare last year. And so we're streamlining that process. And then when they select what city they want to, or what region, or what center, there's going to be a very limited number. Only the 17 to 20 centers that we feel we can handle will be listed there. So there'll be no second or third choice. That caused a lot of issues for us last year as well in different ways. So if students want to take part in an in-person exam during the June session, and we were grateful for the several hundred that did that last June, it was really exciting to get our regional examiners out there and hearing these students in person again. That's what the registration process will look like starting late next week. Register for a spring session June exam. They could select one of the centers only, and we should be able to accommodate them. If for some reason that center just goes flat and nobody registers and there were only a couple people and we can't have in-person exams, generally we can find a regional examiner to take those. It's a pretty low chance that a student registering will be converted to an online Zoom exam in those cases. So just know that that's how that's going to look. And maybe I'll share my screen again. I'll just show you a little bit about what that's going to look like in the database in case this prompts any questions from any of you about how this looks. So I'm in the teacher portal here now. This is actually not what it looks like at the moment. This is a test environment that I'm using. So if you're in your teacher portal and you've logged in, you can go to My Students. You can see your student list. You can see upcoming exams, or you can click register for exams. If you want to register, if you're not confident the family can figure this out sometimes, as long as they have an account registered in the system, you can register for them, or at least start the registration process. Here's your student list. You select what student you want to register. Click next. Click next again. This just simply confirms that you have that student there. And when you go to select the session, these sessions are just dummy sessions. They're not real. But let's say I want to select the Practical Summer 2021 session. And right at the top right away comes students preferring an online exam must register for a Flex Practical exam sessions. So that little warning comes there so they know that that's what has to happen. Register for a piano exam. It'll be classical rather than contemporary. You select the exact exam you want to register for. When you select grade 5 and higher, it shows the family the prerequisites that are available that they need for that particular exam. They can just click OK. That actually doesn't need to be there. We're working on removing that. If they want a mini lesson, they can select yes or no here. It talks about what a mini lesson is. And then this is a new instruction that students are going to see here. This exam session is for students hoping to have their exam with an in-person examiner at one of the centers on the list. We will contact you if we are unable to host an in-person center at your preferred center, and it is understood that you will then have your exam online. And then a plea to teachers, please reach out to our office if you feel you have enough students interested for in-person exams in your center for an upcoming session. And we can talk about those potentials. And a couple of you have done that already. We're doing some legwork for us on the ground so that we can get a number of teachers and a critical mass organized so we get at least a day or two of exams, depending where you are, to justify sending an examiner there and getting a venue and all that kind of stuff. So students will only have one choice. This isn't populated with the centers right now, but we'll be populating that. Any special requests, save as a draft application. I can't do it right now because I need to fill in the first choice and it won't let me, but that's because this is just a test environment. So that's how this is going to look. You save the draft application, and then the next step will come up as a payment. You can tell the student to go into their portal and have the family pay, or if you're a type of teacher who will pay for them and invoice them later, that's perfectly fine too. You can do all that through the teacher portal now if you're not comfortable or if students aren't comfortable doing that on their end. Students still have to have their student portal activated and linked to you as the teacher for you to see their results and to see that option in the registration area. Okay, question. Will the list of centers be released so we can do some planning? Yeah, absolutely. We're going to release that as soon as that registration. I guess when I think about it, that registration page is where you're going to see the list. But I think what I'm going to do is send out an email next week or the week after, letting everybody know what those centers are. Thinking particularly in Alberta, the centers will be Edmonton, Red Deer, Wetaskiwin, and Calgary. So right up and down your major highway there. There will likely be 4 centers where there'll be an option for in-person exams. If you live outside Calgary, a number of you do, and you want to have exams right in your locale because it's an hour or 2 outside Calgary. If you have a full day of exams, reach out to me and we can talk about that potential. It's something that we're entertaining and hoping to make those kind of relationships with those places, especially if you can offer your studio as an exam venue. We find that quite attractive economically. Again, the number of in-person exams have really plummeted through the floor. Most people want their exam online. And so the economics around that and the scale that we have to operate on is quite a bit different than it was before the pandemic. Okay, so that's June in-person exam registration. There's also the in-person flex exam. This we have available right now in 13 different centers. And maybe I'll just list them off here because I have a list. This is where students can register at any time of the year for a flex exam. But we have examiners available in certain areas where we can have the student travel to the examiner's studio, their teaching studio, and have the exam there actually in person. And so when students want that option, they have to register for a flex exam. And in the special instructions box, they have to indicate that they're seeking an in-person exam with an examiner live. And then we'll see that, and then we try to make that happen. The centers where we currently have that arrangement are Coquitlam, BC, as well as Vancouver and pretty much anywhere in the lower mainland, Kelowna, BC, Edmonton, Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, Peterborough, Ontario, Belleville, Whitby, London, Ottawa, Canada, and St. John's, Newfoundland. Those are the only centers right now. GTA in the Greater Toronto area, it is possible, but there are some glitches there. We just don't quite have the infrastructure, but it can work under a couple of circumstances if you're already attached to the music school, let's say. That's the one place where we can make it happen right now because we have the use of their venue. If anyone's interested in that option in their region, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk about the potentials, especially if you know that we have an examiner local to your area. Okay, so that's in-person flex exams. Next on my list is digital badges. I mean, I'm sure you've all heard about digital badges. You've seen some marketing around this. We started this a couple of years ago, and we'd love to see more people taking the digital badge option for piano. And I'm happy to say that in the coming weeks, I have drafts for digital badges for voice and guitar students as well, for voice and guitar repertoire. The digital badge is quite simple. It's aimed at those students that can't commit to a full certificate exam. And we see those numbers dropping yearly. The participation in those is plummeting through the floor to the point where I think the average teacher, maybe only 5 to 10% of their studio is able to take an exam. The digital badge is a great way to include more students in creating a goal, working towards a performance goal, giving them complete control over that performance, and having them get meaningful feedback because we are viewing videos. And what students do is they prepare 3 pieces at any level, 1 to 10, that they're comfortable with. They pre-record them anytime they want throughout the year. They record it multiple times, and when they're finally satisfied, they share links with us to the 3 pieces that they've stored either on YouTube or somewhere, through Microsoft links or Google sharing links, whatever works for them. The examiner goes ahead and views it and makes really detailed comments. The examiner often views those videos 2 or 3 times to make sure they get it right. We're not pressed for time, and we can make a really nice festival style adjudication sort of report for them, complete with things that they're doing well and what are the next 1 or 2 most important things to work on, and maybe even how to work on it. So it's a really great educational tool from that point of view. And we assign a gold, silver, or bronze standing to the 3 performances, and students get that badge in their portal. They can download and print it off if they want. They can display it on social media. But just knowing that they have that standing achieved, students can strive for a gold standard, or silver is a really common outcome right now for this. We see a lot of teachers are taking their students and using it as a motivation or a way to practice and a way to get that sort of baseline feedback. If the student's just unwilling to get to that point where they can put dynamics or phrasing shape into the music, we make that comment explicitly and talk about it so that they're hearing it from a different angle. Those are some of the ways that teachers are using that digital badge so far, and we'd love to see more uptake on that. We have a webinar where I talk about it in detail. You can view the syllabus on our website. And maybe at this point, I'll take you over to the website and just show a few things off there so you can see where things are. Let's go. Here's our homepage. New digital badge assessments. You can see the latest news there. There's a whole article on it here. There's also under the Learning tab, we have the classical piano, or the classical syllabi, the contemporary syllabi. We have a page dedicated to digital badges that students can see a lot of that information, links to the news article, or you can just view the syllabus for the piano digital badge right here. And like I said, pretty soon we're going to have voice repertoire and guitar repertoire as well. It talks about, in a fair bit of detail, how to do the recording, what some of the stipulations are. It's really quite simple, and the schedule of fees. This is perhaps the most attractive. The fee is, way less than half of an exam. It's almost only a third. If students aren't happy with their final result, if they got the bronze or the silver standing, bronze is pretty rare, by the way, they can retest. They can simply resubmit the same videos or any other pieces, pay about half the fee, and do a retest as if they want to upgrade their badge. That's something that I think is a neat idea as well. It's a great way to fill a level when a student's maybe ready to move on and you don't want to spend the time preparing for the full exam, but they want some kind of acknowledgement for that level. It's a great way to fill in a gap that way. Great for those busy students that have bursts of curiosity throughout the year. When you get to the peak of one of those bursts, record a piece, set it aside, catch the next burst of curiosity. And after 3 of those bursts, you've got 3 pieces down that they have a nice digital archive for, and you can submit that for a digital badge quite simply. They registered that through the exam portal. So that's a little bit on the website, what you can find. Why is the back button not working? I guess once I get stuck on this, oh yeah, I see. Then I can go back to the website, still there. If anyone's not sure, sometimes people aren't sure where to access the teacher or student portal. At the top right-hand corner of every web page is a link to the teacher portal, and that's where you can log in there. I think most of you now are on with that and have activated your accounts, and we're grateful for that. Okay, so that's a little bit about digital badges and what's coming down the pipe there. I've talked about the YouTube channel and shown you what that looks like. Just one more thing on my list. I don't want to keep us too long here today, but that is new piano publications. So we had the New Millennium Series piano that's still available through retailers and online, wherever you have, wherever music books are sold, basically. Hal Leonard is the printer and distributor for those publications. And so they are available by any retailer. They're by far the largest music print publisher in the world. And so it's easy for retailers to get it once they know where to look for it. But there's certain problems. That publication was printed first in 1999. It's in desperate need of an update. We're on 25 years now at that publication. It's not going to be available for much longer. We are going to stop printing that. You'll still see them in the stores, I imagine, for the next year or so while the supply runs out. Certain grades are going to run out quicker than others, obviously. You may find old copies of grades 7 and 8 lingering for quite a while, but we are well into development of new publications that we're working with Andrew Harbridge at Harbridge Publishing House. He's a great publisher. He's a CC examiner. He knows us really well, of course. And this was just a great partnership for us and way to develop a whole new piano series. And it's going to replace, none of the pieces will basically be the same. You might recognize some of them from long ago in other books, but we're trying to do our best to source new music that we may have never seen on the syllabus or in print in a conservatory book before. There'll be plenty of new music by Canadian composers, and most of that will be brand new stuff that Andrew's made a call from his large team for. Just so you know, Andrew acquired the assets to Deborah Wadless Publishing about a year ago. And so they are, I would suggest by title, they offer more than any other music publishing company in Canada. And so we're happy to partner with them. It's going to feature a pre-grade 1 album and also grades 1 through 8. We're not going to publish a grade 9 and 10 book. The numbers for sales are just simply too low, and the amount of work that goes into that is just simply too high. It's going to be very difficult it just wouldn't be economically viable at all. We would never recapture the time and money spent on developing that. So we're working on keeping the old grade 9 and 10 books alive for a lot longer from the old series, but grades 1 to 8 with pre-grade 1, we're hoping to have those available by the summer, so that students and teachers could potentially order that, and you should see them in stores by the fall. So we're working through that, making repertoire selections, lots of contemporary repertoire. It will still feature Baroque and classical and romantic repertoire, but hopefully all new stuff that you haven't really seen before or considered using. We're quite excited about it. And just the thought of being able to offer something new in that way for the first time in 25 years is also quite exciting. Okay, questions here. So for the piano repertoire digital badge, oh yeah, preparatory, this comes up once in a while. People have preparatory students that would like to see a prep badge. Yeah, I'm getting closer to coming alongside with that. I didn't think it would be popular. We have a pre-grade 1 piano syllabus test or exam that's not very popular. The odd, we see a few students do that a year, but not too many. But to do a digital badge for prep, Lillian, thanks for that tip. I'll take a good look at that. The repertoire, like the digital badges that we already have, I didn't mention, is wide open. You can use the syllabus as a guide to determine what level things are to get music from, but we're finding most teachers are just, we give them the license in the syllabus to choose their own repertoire. You don't need to get special approval from us for that repertoire. As long as you think it's at that level, that's totally fine. It's not so much about the level for us. It's more about getting students engaged in developing critical listening skills. And when they start creating these recordings and they play for themselves and they have to watch it back, you can see right away they're not happy with it, and they're suddenly motivated on a different way when they have to watch themselves that way. And I've had students do digital badges, they get 6, 7 weeks in before they're satisfied with their recording. And they take their performance to a much higher level than they might even for an exam, unless you were to record it for the exam in advance so they could see what they're doing. But it's a wonderful process. And to do that for prep students, I think would be interesting. We'll definitely take a look at that and see if we can expand to that. Chelsea's asking, could you consider releasing the list of repertoire to teachers in early summer so we can use our summer to research plan, even if the books aren't available yet? The potential's there, just depends on the timeline. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you want to be able to research that. I would say the old books are still available. They're still going to be available into the summer. So I would say if you're planning for next year in that manner, you may want to consider using the old stuff still. But it's going to be hard to release that. It just depends. And then what kind of edition are you going to see? Are you going to even be able to find a lot of this music? Probably not. So we're going to do our best to get this music out there as quick as we can, even if we have to launch grades 1 to 4 in June or July and save the rest for August. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, okay, I understand. That's a good point. That helps us though. That puts the pressure on us to work a little quicker, perhaps. The other thing about this that I didn't mention in terms of the new piano publications is all of these are going to be available in the SuperScore app. I think a number of you have seen the SuperScore app being shown on the many webinars that George Lythurst has done here. He's often a guest with Andrew Harbridge on those webinars. If you look at past webinars on the CCTV YouTube channel, you can see some of those. But it's a really neat platform where the score lives there. Students, instead of paying for the hard copy book, they can still do that. They pay for the copy on an iPad. And through the SuperScore app, which doesn't cost anything itself, students can view the score and they can interact with it in different ways. They can hear MIDI record, they can hear actually live recordings right inside the app. Some of them are going to have backing tracks linked to them. There's other features in there. You can hook it up to a digital piano and put it in learn mode, and students can learn, and the app will show them if they're hitting the right notes or not. All those kind of neat things. But just to be able to hear these pieces, in advance will be a great thing, and to have digital copies of the score. So that's one thing that's in the works. And as we test out and look at the engravings that we're creating, we're actually testing them in the SuperScore app. So know that for those of you on SuperScore, that's going to be a great thing. And we'll have webinars in the new year that show off those features so you can see what that's like. So that's new piano publications. As part of that, I should mention, we are going to continue to publish the Canadian Contemporary Repertoire series. Those books have been out since about 2010, and they're full of contemporary music that serve the contemporary idioms piano syllabus. Of course, you could also use those pieces on the classical piano syllabus. Those books will continue to be published by Hal Leonard, as well as the theory publications. Our old theory publications aren't going to change, although we're recommending the Deborah Wanless Total Theory now. You can still use the old books from CC if you like them, and we're still going to continue to publish those. We're still going to continue to publish the New Millennium series of voice repertoire. We're not going to redo the voice books anytime soon. And I think that's about it. It's just you're going to see the New Millennium series for piano grades 1 to 8 disappear in the coming months. So I think that's all I had to say about that. Does anyone have any other questions here? Anything I've said trigger anything? Again, those of you that are watching after the fact, feel free to email me, derek@conservatorycanada.ca, if you have any questions about anything I've said, about where to find things. And, back to the Zoom thing one more time. Let's go back to the website for a second here. We go to the home page. There's the latest news, which I can scroll through. And there's a Zoom online exam guide. And if you click through to that page, that gives you this nice technical guide that we authored in June 2020. I took quite a bit of time during the pandemic to write this, to tell you exactly how Zoom exams take place, and what they're going to do. There's an FAQ there that we can link to. So that's all about the protocols. And then there's also a Zoom audio guide that I can link to here that's on our website, Guide to Improving Online Teaching and Audio Quality in Zoom. And that gives you, talks to everyone about the Zoom audio settings and how you can go about doing this. Some of this is a little bit out of date, but the basic premise is still there. It's just become more important for people to turn on original sound. Okay. How to do connection tests, how to use an external microphone, quite a bit of stuff there. So a really great technical document. It's perhaps overkill for our families, and right away they'd probably be asking for in-person exams if they read that, I realize, but we realize the convenience is just too great, and it took a pandemic for us to capitalize on that e-exam movement that we started back in 2007 and broaden it to the acoustic environment that we're now hearing most of the exams over. Okay, so thanks for your time and giving me that attention today. It's happy to, I'm happy to present some of these things to you from time to time to keep us all focused on a few things and share with you what our office is thinking about and how things are going and what we want to do going forward. Maybe one other thing too, I mean, participation in exams is declining over time, and that can be somewhat problematic for us at some point. We're looking to the digital badges. Really, we would love your digital badges participation to increase. And that really helps us out as an organization. We are a registered charity. We're always operating in deficit. We find ways to manage that deficit. We have endowed funds set up at the London Community Foundation, which provide us some income, but of course it's never enough. And so really the best fundraising effort I feel we have now is through the digital badges. Something else we're also pursuing is using music as a means for health and wellness. And so we've become sort of we're in the process of becoming a partner member of Dr. Gilles Comeau's Music and Health Research Institute at the University of Ottawa. It's going to take a while, probably the next year, to figure out exactly what that role entails, but we're looking at different ways outside of music assessments to be able to broaden our mission as a music conservatory and meet other needs to serve humanity. And so you're going to hear about that, I think, in the coming year, once we are able to define what those goals are and what that kind of looks like. Through new partnerships, we hope to bring that to you in the fall so that maybe we can find a way to get teachers and their students involved in some of these other missions beyond assessments. So I hope you find that curious as well as I do. It's something I'm becoming passionate about. That's about all I have for today. I don't see any other questions here. I imagine I've covered everything in that sense in enough detail. Thanks for your time and attention today. And I hope you all have a good weekend. In terms of upcoming webinars, please join me next Friday, February 2nd, where we're going to have Alessandra DiCenzo, a CC examiner and teacher, talk to us about how she gets her students motivated and how she gets them to practice. She's got some really amazing ideas. The Friday after that, February 9th, Eleanor and Cecile are back, and they're going to talk about the music of Laure Choisy, French composer, or a Swiss composer rather. And then I think we're going to have to take a couple of weekends or a couple of weeks off there, Friday, February 16th and 23rd. My travel schedule kind of is going to prohibit me, it looks like, from being able to offer a Friday webinar those 2 weeks. So March break will come early, or winter break will come a little bit early, but I promise to try and have sessions almost every Friday through March, April, and into the end of May, and another wave of guests that you're going to hear about shortly in the coming couple of weeks in your inboxes. So keep watching your inbox for details on that. Thanks all of you again. Hope you have a great weekend. Hope your teaching's going well. Reach out to us if you have any questions, and hopefully we'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.